In this unit, we're going to start talking about security. We're mainly going to talk about logging and securing a website and creating user logins. I think we mentioned before, and we need to be careful. It's really easy to, when you're working with databases, to incorrectly set up a database. One of the most common ways of getting in and hacking a database, and a website, is to allow users to enter SQL, even portions of SQL command directly. You should never allow that. That's why, if you remember when we did our SQL, we never took the text from an SQL, from like a text box, and put it straight into an SQL command. We always used a parameter interface, and Microsoft has built-in checks in those parameter queries to eliminate bad code that malicious people would put in there. So that's why you should always use that. But we're going to talk about setting up logins, and first we're going to just go over the Chapter 19 stuff on creating logins. So I've opened up the Chapter 19 sample pages, and there are a couple pages here. First, there's an unsecured page in the main area. So this is just a normal unsecured page. It just says anyone can access this page, and it has a button that'll go to a secured page. And then we have our secured pages, and in this case we just have one. And it's in another folder called Secured Pages, and it is just a really simple page. It says you are now in a secured page up here when we log into this. So let's take a look at these pages. So again, let's just look at the code quickly. So in the unsecure pages is the button, and in that we are just doing a response redirect, just sending the user to the secured page within the secured pages folder. So that's all that's doing. When the page loads, we check their authentication status, and we'll talk about that. And so we'll put their name up there in this little label field if possible. Okay, when we go to the secure page, there's a message here, and when the page loads, we put "you have reached a secure page," and then we also put their name, login name, into that label field. There's also a sign out button, and then we use a forms sign out, and we'll talk more about that in just a sec. A lot of the configuration for these logins and security is done in the web config pages. So we're going to look at those, and you will notice now that there's a web config for the whole site, and then the secure pages are in a separate folder, and there's a separate web config there. And so we can look at that web config file, and so this web config file will be administered for these pages. So if you have a page within a subfolder and it's looking for settings, it'll first look at the web config file that's closest inside that folder and look for the settings there. And if the settings aren't there, it'll then jump up to the next highest web config file and look for the settings there. And then if there's another folder, it'll look there. So you can kind of group these web config files one inside another with these folders. Okay, so we've got these two web config files. Let's look at those. Now, we need to talk about what we call authorization and authentication. So this web config file at the large level will work with authentication, and authentication is to make sure we identify who's who, which users are who, and allow them to log in. And then we have something called authorization, which will only allow or deny users access to certain pages. So in the high level web config file here, and I can kind of tell the difference because they used a lowercase w on this file and uppercase w on this one. So in this lowercase one, that's for the whole site, there's an authentication tag in here, but no authorization. So still anyone can access any of the pages on this website, but there is some information about how you log in and information on where the login information is set. as they talk about in the book, we'll be using mainly and talking about forms of authentication. There's another variation of authentication called Windows authentication. We won't be using that or talking about that. If you need to use that, you can refer to the information in your textbook and the resources online. But we need to just focus on one type. So we'll be using forms authentication. So within our system.web tag here, we add an authentication tag. We have to give the name of our cookie that we're going to use. We have to give a login page that it's going to use, and by default it's login.aspx, so that's not changing. We have to give the type of encoding that's going to be used on the cookie, and by default it should be all that encrypts the cookie and stuff like that. And we need to give a timeout path for how many minutes these cookies will last. So if you don't do anything for 30 minutes, then you'll have to relog in, and you can change that as you go. Now that's part of the authentication stuff. Now if we go to this other web config file, there's authorization stuff, and that's going to deny anonymous users that are not logged in will be denied access and will then automatically be redirected to the login page. So if we run this, if we go to the unsecured page and load and start with that page, and so if a user were just going to that page right away, it says, yeah, anyone can access this page. Are you authenticated? It says false, so we're not authenticated. We haven't logged in, but we can still access this page. Now if I go to the secure page, it'll try to redirect me to the secure page, but it will ASP will, jump in there and redirect me to the login page. So I'm redirected to the login page. So I can kind of see I was trying to go to the secure page up here, and I'm redirected to the login page here. And I can log in. And we'll actually talk about different ways. We're not actually doing full logins here. We're just checking if they entered secret as the password. That's why the little password hint here is type in secret. So I just type in secret there and say login. And now I've reached the secure page. Now also, it looks like a video is done uploading for this course. Let's go back to this. Now if I try to go directly to the secure page and run right there, it will again interrupt me and redirect me to the login page. So I'll try to go to the secure page. Oh. Yes, and it's letting me because I just logged in before, and that cookie is good for 30 minutes. So let's sign out, and now I'll try to run this again. So let's try. So now it should go to the went to the unsecured page. Let's make sure. I want to go to the secure page. I want to make that sure that's my active page. Okay, secured page, go there. Okay, maybe the example will work this time. Sorry about this. Okay, yes. So now I'm trying to go to the secure page. I'm not logged in, and so it's automatically redirecting me. So even if I try to go from like an outside website or type in that address directly, it's not allowing me to go to that page unless I log in with the secret login. Oops. Which I cannot type in apparently. Okay, so I'm going to also then walk you through creating another web page very similar to this, where we secure all the pages in the website. We'll also talk about where the information is stored. You may look in this example. There's an ASP.NET DB database here for storing the database, the login information here. So, okay, so that, the book actually walks you through quite well this section. So I really like the textbook coverage of this, chapter 19 stuff. We'll be just doing the forms authentication, which is the first half of that chapter. But they walk you through, like here's a nice diagram of how this works as far as the login pages go. A web client comes in, ASP.NET checks if the forms cookie is set, and if it's expired, just check if you've been authenticated or logged in. If you haven't been authenticated, then it redirects you to the login page you specify. And then if you log in correctly, then it then sends you back. And it also then checks to make sure you are authorized to access that page. And if so, you're then allowed to view that page. In either case, if you're not, you're redirected to a page denied area. So it kind of walks you through this, and it also walks you through a lot of the code for the login pages, and we'll be experimenting a little bit more of that in the next example when we'll create a website like this from scratch.